Hi, my name is Rebecca Warren, and I'm excited to record this video because I get to share a little bit about myself and my passion. So I'm going to share my screen and share a presentation I created. Hopefully, I don't have tech issues in the middle of this like I did last time I tried to record. So I was born in Pikeville, Kentucky, which is in the far eastern tip of Kentucky, right on the West Virginia border. And it's in basically a region of the Appalachian Mountains called the Cumberland Plateau. And it's a deciduous temperate forest, mixed forest, mostly hardwood trees, oak, maple, hickory, and it's beautiful. Just you can see here these, rolling mountains, and you have 4 seasons. The trees lose their leaves each year, and it's just beautiful. It's also considered to be a hotspot for biological diversity, which is amazing. This is where it is here, just in the eastern part of Kentucky where I was born. It's kind of right there in the tip. This is West Virginia here. And so this is the southern part of this blue strip here is the Cumberland Plateau, and then the northern part is the Allegheny Plateau. But the Appalachian Mountains stretch over 2,000 miles from northern Alabama to Canada. There are many plant and animal species. There in my particular region right here through eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, also, Virginia and eastern Tennessee, there are a lot of large mammals, small mammals, deer, black bear, bobcats, fox, lots of different types of bird species and fish. And some of these are on the endangered species list. And so that's unfortunate, but it is just a really amazing region of the Appalachian Mountains. So just to kind of give a little bit of, looking at the ecosystem and the interconnectedness of the different components of the system. In a deciduous forest, you have nutrient cycling between the trees and the soil. So as a change happens to the soil, that will change certain components or characteristics of the plant, which then will affect the soil. So we have this positive feedback loop. Also with the trees and the water. So it being a deciduous forest and losing its leaves each year, the process of evapotranspiration is a bit different than if it was like an evergreen forest. So you have a higher moisture content in the soil. More moisture stays in the soil than going back to the roots. And part of that is because the tree is dormant for some portion of the year. Also, the trees are going to, in the mountainous regions, the trees are going to control the flow of the water and the runoff. So also, just kind of on a more kind of colloquial kind of basis, we have some balance between humans and nature historically in the region. So not only the native people who lived in the region before European settlers came, but also after settlers came, that region was too rugged, too hilly to be used for agriculture or for pastures for livestock. So the settlers would either continue west or they would stay and they would learn to live in balance with nature. And so they lived off the land. They would hunt for the meat. They would forage the forest for nuts, berries, and they would fish in the streams. And I found this lovely picture of an Appalachian woman who has gathered her herbs to make medicines. So there was this kind of balance between humans and nature until coal was discovered in the region. Then that changed everything. So the human action here that is kind of the focus of my presentation is coal. All right, so there is lots of coal in the region, and because it is mountainous, that creates certain challenges and different types of methods that need to be used. So we do have underground methods that can be used, just like in the flatlands. You can, you've got shaft mining, slope mining, which kind of have minimal, at least minimal visual impact on the surface, because you have a small entrance, and you have, generally it requires more manpower. So there are people that are required. It's a small space, tunnels and low. So you can't get heavy equipment in there. So it requires something different. But the mountain methods for surface mining are different. Okay, so surface mining generally means that instead of taking a small entryway to enter the below the surface of the earth, you just take off the surface of the earth. Okay, so sometimes you can hear it called strip mining and things like that. With a mountain, which has coal at the top, makes it not too deep, just a couple of 100 feet below the top of the mountain, you've got a coal bed. So what has become a preferred method in terms of extracting that coal is to just remove the top of the mountain. Just take the top of the mountain off, and there's the coal just right there. So you don't have to dig a shaft or have a lot of people. You just need explosives and some heavy equipment, and you'll need a few drivers for that heavy equipment. But it actually became a very cost-effective way to extract coal in Appalachia. So another kind of tidbit here is that the coal at the surface, at the summit of the mountains, because of the age, it is actually lower sulfur than the coal that is deeper. And so it's preferred because it burns cleaner. And that is helpful to energy companies, because then they don't run the risk of, reaching their emissions limits under the Clean Air Act. So they actually want this coal under the top of the mountain because it burns cleaner, and they don't have to worry about, having those emissions caps exceeded. Okay, so lots of environmental impacts from this human action called mountaintop removal. So the biggest, most obvious thing is that the topography is permanently changed. So the contour of the landscape is different forever. Also, they have to remove all of the soil and plant life. All of the trees have to be clear cut. And so there is, deforestation that is happening on the top of the mountains, and they either sell the timber or they burn it to get it out of the way. They just need it out of the way. Now, one of the biggest impacts to the environment is what they do with what they call overburden, and that is after they've set off the explosives and they have all of this rock that they've busted up, all this rock and soil. Well, it's in the way of the coal. So what do they do with it? They actually take their dump trucks and their bulldozers and they fill the valleys. So you have your beautiful mountain and valley. And so they take the top of the mountain, use their explosives, and then they move all of that rubble, rock and soil, and they fill the valleys. So the streams that for centuries have been, channels for water runoff are filled. And this creates a lot of problems. One of the early indicators that this was going to be problematic was that people who lived in the valleys were losing their homes because of mudslides. There were no trees to absorb the water. So rainwater didn't it just started washing out down the side of the mountain through the valley fills. And so lots of mudslides, and homes would be destroyed, cars would be buried. It was very devastating. So the other part of that is that the water runoff through the valley fills, because there are different chemicals that are kind of brought to the surface and then put in these valley fills, and now water is running through them. So different chemical ions would then get washed down into the streams in the valleys below. Also, selenium levels were elevated in the water. And so this then degraded the species of animals. So we had defects with birds, fish. We actually had total loss of some fish species in the streams and rivers below. Also, the degradation of human health was significant. This was something that was scientifically researched over several decades, and there was increased cases of cancer, in particular lung cancer, because through the explosions, the silica dust would form a cloud, and then the cloud would drift and settle into the valleys, and then it was inhaled. So the silica dust would then cause an increased rate of lung cancer as compared to other regions in the country, increased incidence of birth defects. And so all of this has been scientifically studied, and over the course of time, it has been shown that this is an impact on human life as a result of mountaintop removal as a method of mining coal. So this is, something that I've been kind of following for decades. And just so you know, it is still happening. In fact, West Virginia, just a month ago, the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection did issue a new permit for a new surface mine in West Virginia in April of last month. So this is something that is still alive and well. The energy companies, the coal companies, are still aggressively seeking more permits. We already have more than 500 mountains that have been destroyed, and it's still going. Okay, so this is my sources list, but I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I want to, actually, I'm just going to switch screens for a second. I'm going to show you just my Google Earth screen here. This is an example of what mountaintop removal looks like. If you zoom in, you can see that they've just taken the top of the mountain, and so all of this limestone and other types of rock is just there exposed. You don't see any piles of coal in this one. Sometimes you'll see big mounds of coal where they're getting ready to load it up in their trucks and take it down the mountain. But what I wanted to show you is that, just right down the valley here, this is a community, So there are people living here, and this is just one example of a mountain that has been just destroyed by mountaintop removal. So if you look around and zoom out, you'll see this is just one of hundreds. So you can kind of see the magnitude of this. All of these gray splotches that you see just stretching all the way up through the region. All of these are surface mines where the top of the mountain has been removed for the purpose of extracting coal. So it just goes on and on. And sometimes you can actually see these. If you're traveling on I-64, for example, you can actually see some of the mountain, the bald gray, just now limestone topped mountain instead of the rich forest. So this is just an example of one particular region and the environmental impacts of human action on the biological diversity, human health. Luckily, we do have scientific studies that have been that have been ongoing for decades. And we do have, for example, the NIH and various institutions with toxicology studies have really looked at the human impact, which is you know it's great that they've done that. It is not great that we still have permits being issued. We did have Clean Streams Act, some legislation signed by Obama that would have really helped with some of the impact, especially on human life, but also with aquatic life, just in terms of trying to have mechanisms enforced where some of the toxicity in the water could be minimized. Unfortunately, the Trump administration got rid of a lot of the rules that were protective in nature early on in the Trump administration. And so now, we're potentially in a position where those can be reenacted, and so we'll see. It's an ongoing saga of the Appalachian Mountains and the Cumberland Plateau, and the destruction and the devastation to biological diversity, and the impacts on human health that have happened in Appalachia. So I hope you enjoyed my video. Hopefully this didn't end up being too long. Thanks for watching.